Today we are going to be looking at the slope and the rate of change. So the slope of a line is basically how much it slants. So like this would be like a very steep line. This would be a not very steep line. We are trying to look at the steepness of a line. So we generally think of the slope as the rise over the run, okay? And here is our slope formula, okay? So remember when we have an ordered pair is given to us in the form x comma y. So in our formula, we have an x1, y1 and an x2, y2. So the first thing I like to do when I'm trying to find my slope is label those points. So I'm going to call this x1, y1 and x2, y2, right? Because an ordered pair is in the form x comma y. Okay, so my slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So all I'm going to do is take those numbers that I labeled and plug them in for x and y. So y2 is 1 and y1 is 0. So I have 1 minus 0. Y2 or x2 is 3 and y or x1 is negative 2. So I have minus negative 2. Okay, now remember 2 negatives always makes a positive. So I'm going to change this minus minus here to a plus sign. So now I have 1 minus 0 is 1. 3 plus 2 is 5. So my slope, we always use the letter m to represent slope. I don't know why, but it's always m, is 1 over 5. Okay, let's look at example B. So I'm going to label my x1, y1 and my x2, y2. So again, my slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so I'm going to have 2 minus 2 over 2 minus negative 1. Now again, 2 negatives is going to make a positive, so I'm going to change that to a plus sign. And I get my slope to be 0 over 3. Well, if you type 0 over 3 in your calculator, that'll tell you that your slope is just 0. Okay, and just a little side note here, if you get a line that has a slope of 0, it is always a horizontal line. Okay, let's practice another one. All right, so x1, y1, x2, y2. And I always just like to write down my formula just to make sure I'm not substituting in my values incorrectly. So y2 is 1, y1 is 4, x2 is 3, and x1 is also 3. All right, so I get 1 minus 4 is negative 3, and I get 3 minus 3 is 0. Now, similarly to the last one, type that in your calculator. Type negative 3 divided by 0. When you type that in your calculator, you're going to get an error. Okay? You are not allowed in the world of math to divide by 0. It just doesn't work. So when you get an instance like this, where you get something divided by 0, we say that our slope is undefined. Now, any line that has an undefined slope is a vertical line. Oops. And I always kind of remember this by vertical line, undefined. Kind of rhymes with itself. Vertical line, undefined. Okay, now, so far we've been solving for slope mathematically using the formula, but if you're given a graph, you can actually find the slope just by counting the rise over the run. Remember, we said slope is equal to the rise over the run. So that's how many it goes up or down over how many it goes left or right. So I'm going to pick 2 points on this graph that kind of go through 2 boxes perfectly. So like this line right here kind of goes through perfectly. And this point right here, right in the middle of 3 boxes. Okay, so it's the rise over the run. Okay, so if I start at my bottom dot there, how much am I rising up? Well, 1, 2, 3. I just went up 3. So my rise is 3. Then I need to run over to my next dot. So whoop, I ran over 1. So that's my run. So my slope for this line is 3 over 1 or just 3. Okay, so you can also find the slope by counting it on the graph as well, if you're given a graph. Okay, now there are 4 different types of slope. The first type of slope would be a line that slopes up to the right, so something like this. Okay, this is a positive slope. Okay, so that means our slope is greater than 0, a positive slope. We can also have a slope that slants down to the right, so something that looks like this. Okay, well, if up to the right was a positive slope, down to the right is a negative slope. So in this case, you're going to get a slope that is smaller than 0. So like a slope of -1, a slope of -5/3, something like that. Okay. So we had negative, we had positive. Then we had those 2 cases up here. Okay. A 0 slope. So a 0 slope is going to be a horizontal line, just like we said before. So this line right here is a 0 slope, or m is equal to 0. Okay, like we said before, a 0 slope is always going to be a horizontal line. And then our last kind of slope is an undefined slope. So this would be an example of an undefined slope. All right, and like we said up here when we solved it mathematically, this is where you get something divided by 0. So this is always going to be a vertical line, just like we said before. Vertical line undefined. All right, so those are our 4 different types of slopes. Okay, and here is just a summary of all of them as well. Okay, we have our slope formula, we have our positive slope, our negative slope, our 0 slope, and our undefined slope. 4 different kinds of slopes. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we are going to graph a line when we are given a point and the slope. Okay, and when we do this, I want you to use the slope to find 2 other points. Okay, so this is how this works. The point they give me is -2, 4. So I'm going to plot that point first. -2 up 4. There's my slope. Okay, I want to graph 1 point to the right of this point and 1 point to the left. So I'm going to start with just the slope they give me. Remember, this is the rise over the run. So this is telling me that I'm going to go down 1 and I'm going to go up 2. Or sorry, right 2. Whew. Okay, rise over the run. So from this point, I'm going to go down 1 and I'm going to go right 2. And this is where my new point's going to be, right here. Okay, but technically, that negative is in front of the whole fraction. So like in this case, I gave the negative to the 1. But we can also do this where I give the negative to the 2, like this. That means the same thing. So in this case, this is telling me to go up 1 and left 2. Okay, positive means up, negative means left. Okay, or negative means down, positive means right. So from my initial point that I started from, I'm going to go up 1, left 2. Okay, now I have 3 points, and then all I have to do is connect them to make my line. And remember, we want to extend our lines all the way through the graph. All right, let's look at another one. -3, -4. So -3, -4 is going to be right here on my graph. So to plot my first point, remember I have rise over run. Both of these numbers are positive, so I'm going to go up 2, right 2. Those are my 2 positive directions. Up 2, oh sorry, right 3. 1, 2, 3. So there's my second point. Okay, now I said I want to go 1 to the right, 1 to the left. Not for any specific reason, just so that we can see how this works. Well, positive 2 over 3 is the same thing as -2 over -3, right? Those negative cancels out and it gives us a positive 2/3. But since I want to go to the left, I'm going to use -2 over -3, which means the exact same thing. So if I were to do my rise over run for this one, this is going to be down 2, left 2, because those are my 2 negative directions. So from here, I'm going to go down 2. Oh my gosh, I keep doing 2 on the bottom. It's 3. 1, 2, 3 to the left. Okay, now I would know if I made a mistake if that did not look like it was going to make a straight line. But that to me looks like it's going to make a nice straight line. So I'm going to connect those 3 points all the way through my graph. And there is my line. Okay, now just one more thing that we're going to briefly touch upon are parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel lines have the same slope, but different y-intercepts. Okay, so these lines over here are parallel lines. They are 2 lines that never intersect, and they have the same slope. Parallel lines always have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, however, have a slope that's going to multiply to equal -1. So what that means is here they give us just an example slope of A and a slope of -1 over A. A times -1 over A, if I multiply those together, I get A over -A, which gives me -1. Okay, sometimes we like numbers better. So let's say I did a slope of 2 and a slope of -1/2. 2 times -1/2 gives me 2 over -2, which gives me -1. That's how we know that these are perpendicular lines, because when I multiply their slopes together, they give me a -1. Okay? Parallel lines never intersect. Perpendicular lines always intersect at a right angle. That's what makes them perpendicular.